The People's Democratic Party presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar has visited Lagos to lay out his economic agenda at a forum hosted in the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Rise business correspondent Rotus Odiri sent in this report.
The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, held a private sector economic forum on September the 13th to review the economic agenda of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar. The candidate used the hashtag on Twitter, Atiku at LCCI. In his opening remarks, Dr. Michael Olawale Cole, president of the LCCI, said Nigeria needs a new economic order.
We need institutional reforms and sound governance, which are very critical to creating a new economic order for our very, very great Nigeria.
Dr. Ayo Teriba, economist and chair of the LCCI Economic and Statistics Committee, laid out the points he wanted Atiku Abubakar to address.
Everyone would like to know how you will improve on each of these four: on liquidity, on stability, on growth, and harmony.
In his response, Atiku emphasized private sector involvement and laid out a grand infrastructure plan to the tune of $20 billion in funding, and also an additional $10 billion in economic stimulus funds within the first 100 days of taking office if he wins.
We shall incentivize with regulation and tax incentives a consortium of private sector institutions to establish an infrastructure debt fund with an initial carrying capacity of $20 billion. Within the first 100 days in office, I will create an economic stimulus fund with an initial investment capacity of approximately $10 billion to prioritize support for MSCs across the economic sectors as they offer the greatest opportunities for achieving inclusive growth.
Some questions followed on Twitter with a lot of emphasis on how. Samuel Apara on Twitter asked, how will he get the money within 100 days? Another Twitter user asked, where will the $30 billion come from? Another asked for the source of funding, like the last Twitter user. Source of funding? Short term, especially. Another Twitter user summed up a selection of the reactions with, quote, a lot of what Atiku said he will do, but no mention of how. So, more specifics needed from the candidate of the PDP, but he was commended for showing up. The Labour Party candidate, Peter Obi, was scheduled to deliver his economic plans the following day, September 14th, but postponed to a yet-to-be-announced date. The candidate of the ruling All Progressive Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is not scheduled to address the LCCI until October the 28th. As the clock ticks toward Election Day 2023, Nigerians will be hoping to hear more specifics from the candidates considered to have the best chance of assuming the mantle of economic leadership in the new year. Rotus Odiri, Arise News.
For an in-depth analysis on this report, we're now being joined by Rise business correspondent Rotus Odiri. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Rifai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, so I was there. I was live tweeting the event as he was speaking. And again, look, the LCCI, they tried to get these three main candidates back to back. So we should start there. So Atiku was supposed to be yesterday, Peter Obi was supposed to be today, and then Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu after that. But Peter Obi pulled out. Don't know why, and he hasn't given a date as to when he's going to speak to them. So it would really have helped if that vision had been realized to have the three of them back to back, put forward their economic plans so we can have a proper comparison of what they want to do. But as it is, it's only Atiku that came forward, and so that's what we're left with. Now, the main takeaway, if you look at the front page of today's This Day, is the $10 billion economic stimulus plan that he said he's going to put forward within the first 100 days of his administration, if he wins. In addition to the $20 billion that he says is going to be for the infrastructure. That's $30 billion altogether. So as I was live tweeting, I was getting responses from people who were saying, how is he going to get the funds for this? Because $30 billion altogether, that's our budget, right? Now, his language because it looked like he was really emphasizing the fact that I'm going to make a conducive business environment for the private sector. He kept talking about a warm handshake with the private sector. He talked about tax rebates. Even at one point, he turned to Mr. Dr. Cole and Ayo Teriba saying, what do you want from me? Whatever the private sector wants, I will give it to you. in terms of being able to push things forward. So it looked like he was trying to make the private sector and the business community as comfortable as possible, and hopefully maybe even foreign investors who are looking at this saying, hey, look, if he wins, well, he's going to make a conducive environment and then funds are going to pour in. He talked about selling off state-owned enterprises. He mentioned the debt, saying he's going to take a line-by-line look at our debt. So there are a lot of things, but what people want is specifics. Foreign direct investment in Nigeria, according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, it was $4.8 billion in 2021. I think Egypt was the highest recipient at $5.1 billion. I think the biggest project, if you think on the African continent, is probably Mozambique's LNG project at $20 billion. That's the private sector initiative by Total. So if you're saying that you want to bring in $10 billion within your first 100 days, you've got to tell folks how. And then you've also got to visualize a benchmark for Nigeria. Who do we benchmark Nigeria against if we're talking about development? Well, the giant of Africa, so it's probably not any other African nation. We had the president of the Nigeria-Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Ishmael Balogun, on the Global Business Report. He was talking about increasing trade between both countries. Do you benchmark Nigeria against Indonesia? We actually have it. We can put it up there where we're comparing both nations in terms of population-wise, where Nigeria is about 211. So there it is. If you want to put a vision forward for Nigeria, who are we benchmarking ourselves against? So you can look at it as terms of GDP, gross domestic product, per capita GDP, unemployment, inflation. He didn't get into how he was going to reduce inflation. He didn't get into the consequence of a single exchange rate. He wanted that because even raising revenue. He said on one hand, he said he's going to give tax rebates, which is going to reduce your revenue, right, with respect to the private sector. How do you increase revenue? So he's commended for coming forward, laying out his plan, letting people scrutinize it. We commend him for that. But what Nigerians are asking, the temperature I was getting from at least the responses, is that we need to know the how. How are you going to do this? So that's what we see. And again, it's unfortunate. He's the only plan that we have so far, and we don't have the others. We really push for the other. Look at the manufacturing sector, right? When Ayo Teriba spoke first, he laid out specific issues he wanted Atiku to address. And one of those was sectoral reform. Nigeria's manufacturing sector, quarter on quarter, it contracted by 15%. They are facing an FX crisis. They are facing smuggling. They don't have power. And look at GDP growth. Second quarter was 3%. So Ayo Teriba, when he came out, he said, listen, sectoral reforms, how do you change this? I'm not asking for him to put a PowerPoint slide in front, but to at least visualize these things and say, this is how I'm going to change this particular, so manufacturing, the financial sector. Look at our export figures. This is a constant story. Our largest Q2 export value, crude oil, almost 80% of exports. Going back to the Nigeria-Indonesia Chamber of Commerce president, he was saying that he wants to promote more non-oil exports to Indonesia. So I showed him that graphic. I said, sir, you want to promote exports to Indonesia. How are you going to do it when crude oil? Yeah, so if you assume that he's the president and he wants to make these changes, right? That is the Chamber of Commerce gentleman. You put that question forward to any other person. So you've got to visualize for Nigerians. You've got to show them these numbers. You've got to say, hey, look, this is where we are, and this is where I want us to get to, and this is how I am going to do it. Again, this is hard work. I mean, this is whoever, so that's where we are. That's where we are.
So, Rich, I just want to jump in there. I'm happy you talked about Indonesia and everything, and you talked about the fact that we've had a recurring decimal of crude oil exports still being the major point. Should I even shock you?
Yeah.
America set up AGOA. Go and look the major exports from Nigeria on AGOA platform. They're still using largely to carry crude.
Yeah.
So when Indonesia is saying they want to partner with us in terms of trade, and apart from crude oil, it's going to be a hard one. Right. You know why? Because we are not doing the hard work according to the industries. Go and check most of our exports. It's still less value-added products.
Right. So how do you change that?
The problem I also see with it, at first, I commend Atiku Abubakar because, in all fairness, this is empirical and objective.
Right.
He's the only one that has released a plan.
Right.
He's the only one that have come out to talk to the LCCI. I don't know why the likes of Peter Obi reneged.
I don't know
why the other kind, the Bola Tinubu Kwankaso, and the other people they invited reneged. please, they must attend.
Well,
because
Tinubu is October 28th.
Okay, October 28th.
Yeah,
okay, so Tinubu has not reneged.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll see something from Tinubu. And his campaign spokesperson, one of his spokesperson, did say he's going to release his plan very soon before campaign starts. So we're looking forward to his plan, to dissect his plan. Kudos to Atiku first because he's the only one doing it. But when I saw the speech, it was low on how.
That's what everybody was asking.
You can't just say, okay,
yeah.
There was another one he said. He said, I will unify exchange rate. The question is how? Just like I asked the presidential candidate that, oh, will you float in Naira? He said no. But I will unify exchange rate. How?
And when you
how are you going to do it?
And get this, if you unify the exchange rates, he also said he wants to eliminate, well, he vaguely said he wants to eliminate subsidies, right? If you unify the exchange rates and we have one rate, at what cost do you then bring in refined petroleum? This is assuming before the refineries are all working and everything. And then at what cost? Because that's to balloon, because NNPC said we spent, it was 462 Naira per litre at the official exchange rates, right?
Even the shocking thing is,
yeah,
when I press further, most of these presidential candidates, they've not gotten an economic analyst alone that will even tell them that what will the Naira, what rate will be the true value of Naira when you unify the exchange rates.
Right, right.
Because when you unify it, it's no longer going to be this 430 something or 413.
Of course not.
It's going to move up.
No,
so what is going to be the rate?
By the way,
because you need to be able to make scenario projections for what is going to be the rate, then the impact on the economy, then the knock-on effect as regards inflation.
He didn't mention inflation.
He didn't mention inflation. This 30 billion he's saying he wants to collect. How is he going to get it? Is it going to be development financing? Is it African development that is going to meet? What's going to be the knock-on effect? How is he going to bring about those sectoral reforms he's talking about? How?
Okay, I'd like to comment on this. And it's as follows. First, to commend the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry for organizing this presidential agenda forum.
Yes.
For leading candidates. And I hope that they will not be discriminatory in doing this. I've heard the name of Atiku Abubakar, I've had the name of Bola Tinubu, I've heard the name of Peter Obi. I hope that perhaps they will create an opportunity to stretch it a bit further. You recall that in previous encounters of this nature, someone complained on this same program that why was Omoyele Sowore, for example, not invited, where were other candidates not invited, in this case, the Nigerian Bar Association. So Nigerians, I think, would like to hear more from these candidates before the official commencement of campaigns on September 28. And the wider afield the scope is, the better, I think. And I think that what the SCCI has also done is to provide an opportunity for us to begin to focus on the issues.
Yes.
We commended the NBA for that. The SCCI has also made its own intervention. And the point made by Dr. Michael Olawale Cole, one of the few persons I know in this city of Lagos who has more than 2 streets named after him. I don't know how he managed to do that. He made a point about the connection between politics and the economy. Yeah. He was saying that, look, the SCCI is non-partisan, but nobody should just stand aloof and not see the connection between politics and the economy, and the need for whoever wants to rule Nigeria, lead Nigeria, that's a better phrase, not to see that connection. With inflation at over 19%, with unemployment at over 33%, with food inflation at over 23%, with crude oil theft being a major issue. So I think the platform was well chosen, the platform was well organized. Now to go to the candidate himself, that's Atiku Abubakar. Yes, his presentation looked like a classic piece for presentation before the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He struck all the right notes. Nigeria is broke. Nigeria has been mismanaged since 2015. Nigeria needs to be rescued. Typical political talk, right? And then he was asked by Dr. Ayo Teriba what he wants to do about liquidity, stability, growth, institutions, and all of that. I don't know whether in your assessment you think he addressed all the issues. But whether or not he did, at least he raised some key points about Nigeria being in very dire economic straits, about his plan, for example, to have a handshake with the private sector and to support the small, medium, enterprises, medium-scale enterprises with about 30 billion to ensure, inclusive growth. He even boasted there that he would sell off the refineries. Okay, he will address poverty.
Right.
He would try to ensure prosperity.
Data on job growth.
These are standard things, that we hear from every politician.
Right.
I hope that speech is something that he himself has internalized. And I will not face a situation, if he wins, somewhere down the line, where he will say, oh, I didn't say that. We have had that too many times in this country. People become president, and they turn around and said, oh, I didn't say that. You confront them with the evidence that you said this. And they will say, well, maybe somebody wrote that for me.
Yeah.
So as former Vice President Atiku Abubakar goes forward in engaging with the people, we need to see conviction. Both of you are right, Rotus and Rufai, about getting the granular details. It's not about proclamations. It's about what you want to do. And that is a serious matter, because even in the United Kingdom, Liz Truss, well-trained, well-educated, had made all kinds of promises up to this moment. After announcing a rescue plan, she cannot provide the details. And that's in a jurisdiction where people are far more serious-minded, far more attentive than they are here in Nigeria. However, Vice President Atiku Abubakar was not all about the economy yesterday. He had another event at the Bamura Hall at the Federal Palace Hotel, where he met with Lagos politicians of the PDP variety, and he promised to support the PDP and ensure that the PDP wins in Lagos. Today, he will be going to Ibadan to meet with Seyi Makinde, who is governor of your state, and other stakeholders. And we're told that part of that is to see how he can further address the Wike problem. Seyi Makinde being a principal supporter of Governor Wike of Rivers State, who has issues with the PDP and the presidential candidate of the party. So Atiku Abubakar is in the Southwest trying to build confidence and trust ahead of the commencement of the campaigns on September 28th. But we need to continue to interrogate these candidates whenever they show up, whether it is Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi or Bola Ahmed Tinubu or Kwankwanso or any of the other candidates who also deserve to be heard on an issue-based platform.
Yep.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, no answer is also an answer. I've always failed to see the point in trying to browbeat people and draw blood from a stone. It's better to trust the audience. The audience can tell the yawning gaps where they exist, as you have found with the people replying your tweets asking how. I think it's really important for all political candidates to demonstrate a grasp of the problems that we face and also demonstrate that they have a clear roadmap. And people are asking now for the minutiae. And in the spirit of responsiveness and accountability, then it should be given. So it's extremely important that all the candidates show that they listen. Atiku Abubakar has actually put himself forward, whereas others have not, which they ought to. But it's so to go further than merely putting yourself forward, to actually respond to those asking how, by supplying those details and filling in the blanks is extremely important.
Indeed, indeed. Exciting election ahead of us.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rotus. So for Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Michael, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. So we got those big hot inflation figures out from the United States yesterday, and really they're overshadowing everything that's going on. Shares in Asia Pacific going down as well. Big drops on Wall Street. I'll come on to all that in just a moment. So basically, nobody really doing well. And the US is also considering more sanctions on China. The emphasis here is on them and the threat to Taiwan and so on, to try to deter it from invading Taiwan. The problem with putting sanctions on China is that it really will get in the way, whatever you think about the economy there, it really will get in the way of supply chain. So as you've been talking in the program so far about the granular detail, you're absolutely right. And I think we need to see what the detail of these particular sanctions is going to be. And the United States needs to be particularly cognizant of the fact that actually pulling the dragon's tail is probably not a great idea if we want to keep the supply chains going. Not to say that China should be discouraged from invading Taiwan. And we can talk about this later on if you want to, but do notice that Putin and Xi are meeting probably towards the end of the week at this conference in Kazakhstan. And I'd be very interested to know if China is looking at what's happening as far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned before weighing up whether or not it really wants to go in for Taiwan. So, just leaving you with that thought, let's move our attention to the United States. The Dow down. It was its worst day since June 2020. The Dow was down about 1,200 points, I think. Futures are not really showing a great deal of interest in the markets this morning. I think the important thing to get out of those figures yesterday, I did mention I thought they would be confusing. I really think the clear view about this is that inflation is now not just confined to fuel costs. It's about all the food costs as well. And of course, the difficulty there is that these kind of inflationary price rises apply to the poorest members of the community as well. So there's a lot to deal with in the United States. At the other end of things, the world's richest man, that's Elon Musk. It looks like Twitter shareholders, as I was suggesting yesterday, have approved the deal now, but it's still for the $44 billion. So he's got to, as far as the shareholders are concerned, he needs to go ahead with that. But if you remember, he had and continues, as I understand it, to have doubts about what the real level of Twitter customers actually is and how much of that is fake addresses and all the rest of it. However, the shareholders have approved the takeover. To the EU, and I suggested this story might develop, and it has. Certainly ministers are now drawing up contingency energy plans for the winter. A mandatory target is being proposed for households and also businesses not to use fuel during peak times and so on. Again, granular detail. We'll get some more detail of that as the week goes on. Germany, as far as the EU is concerned, is drawing up what it describes as a new China trade policy. No more naivety. That's what it's saying there. China, it's actually worth mentioning. There are two things about this. The first is this politician, Robert Habeck, who is the economy minister. Now, his roots are deep within the green movement in Germany. And I don't need to tell you that there will be a lot of internal debate about where the Greens actually go, given that Germany is pivoting on nuclear power and also coal. And it's very, very important to mention also that China is Germany's biggest trading partner for the past 6 years. And so really there's a lot about the internal debate that needs to happen there. We've just had the inflation figures in the UK. Here in the UK, inflation is dipping very, very slightly, but only very, very slightly. I don't think it's come along with what the Bank of England sort of thought it would be, about 9.9%, but that's for last month. And again, it's because of fuel prices dropping out of the index. As I keep saying, all that inflation does is measure the rise in prices. It doesn't necessarily address itself to the cost of living itself. The Bank of England probably will be looking at these figures, but I still think they'll be raising rates. Remember, they postponed their MPC meeting, which was going to take place today, until next week after the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. UK businesses, again, granular detail. This is becoming a good theme of the programme this morning, isn't it? There's no detail about how businesses are actually going to benefit from this emergency energy package at the moment. Apparently, we're not going to hear anything until November. It's a complicated package, so we're being told. But again, the households are going to get it on October the 1st. Businesses are going to have to wait and see how it applies. I guess it's complicated by the fact that many businesses probably have their own contracts. Kwasi Kwarteng, the new Chancellor, his target 2.5% growth is being questioned by many, many people right now, including a lot of analysts who wonder actually where this growth is going to come from, given that it's going to take a long, long time. And it is worth pointing out that it's not since the 1960s that the UK managed a 3% percentage growth figure annually. It dropped down to 2%, and there it's remained more or less ever since. Kwarteng's target is 2.5%. Again, big doubts as to how he's going to reach that. And I think that Aldi as well. Now, Aldi has become the fourth largest supermarket in the UK. It says a great deal about the way in which people are altering their shopping habits. It used to be felt it was just a discounter, and what's there is there, and what isn't there, and all the rest of it. Now people are actually treating it as part of their weekly shop, so they can quite see the cheaper food prices are chiming very well with the way in which people want to spend their disposable income on food. And finally, oil and other commodities, well, they basically suffered a major setback. Not to say that oil won't come back, I suspect it probably will, but this is all to do with a stronger dollar, because even though, well, adding to the fact that those US inflation figures were quite hot yesterday, there's no question in people's minds that the Fed will be raising rates fairly aggressively for a few months to come. That's the global view.
Well, first, Michael, let me ask you about the US inflation figures. President Biden is the only one saying, oh, these figures will seem to show progress in terms of inflation reduction. But what we know is that, the Inflation Reduction Act that the president seemed to be celebrating is an issue, and that there is no hard, soft landing in terms of inflation in the United States. It's now quite certain that the Feds will increase rates, even if not by 0.75 percentage points, basis points, maybe about a full 1%, full basis points. What do you think in this regard? Because it looks like the way the market reacted yesterday, the New York Stock Exchange going down almost immediately. So where is the optimism here? Is President Biden more concerned about the November elections, which may well be a major subtext to this latest development in the US? And then now in the UK, we're told by Financial Times this morning that it looks like households may get the help they are looking for, businesses not quite, until maybe in November. And the businesses, industry is saying, look, this help has to come very quickly. How is the government going to find that balance in spite of all the promises and the lack of details that makes it all so difficult in appearance?
Well, I've already covered that business, haven't I, about business not actually hearing the detail of this, and I placed extreme stress on the fact that you have already been talking about the granular detail of politicians' proposals, and again, businesses are saying, so where's the meat? What is the detail about this? So we're not going to hear anything, as I understand it, until November the 1st. It may well be brought forward. I think there are going to be lots of cries for that. But the message from civil servants working on this from the Treasury right at the moment is the package has not had any detail, or the detail is not finished as far as the business package is concerned. And as I was saying, and you quite rightly observe, households will get it from October the 1st. So we have to wait to see about that. I have no hope. I have no faith whatsoever in the US President Joe Biden and what he imagines is happening about inflation. Remember, this package, this anti-inflationary package, was originally the infrastructure package, and that got voted down as it did. I mean, he must be. It may be because he's too old. It may be because he's not really with it. It may be because his team is not strong. But for the world's leading economy to have a leader that is pretending that inflation is getting better, for all the reasons I've just been saying in my report, it is not getting better. The headline rate is more or less stable. But the important thing is, as I was saying earlier on, that core inflation is still relatively high in the United States. And the only thing that it's not just about fuel prices, but it's also about food. And food is really what Main Street actually lives on. Never mind Wall Street, never mind the White House, never mind the Washington bubble. Real people have to buy food. I cannot believe that he's actually saying that at the moment, if that answered your question.
Well, before we go, Rufai, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just quickly wanted to say something, but maybe I'll take you on it tomorrow because there's no time. I wanted to take you on CPI numbers coming out of America. There's been some, good signs and reduction in CPI numbers, even in the UK, because of that amount reduced from fuel price. We'll talk about all of that tomorrow.